It's the very first step in invention, and it's the very first step in art making, which I just think is amazing.
I've always found it relaxing to sew as well as satisfying to create something by hand, and if it's a gift, that also brings joy to others. It's really special to have such a skill and be able to share it.
I think there's something really soothing for me about the hum of the sewing machine, both from my mother's sewing when I was a child and my own. And I know that, like all women in my family, like many women in many families, there's a history of like creating out of necessity, but also delight. My grandmother knitted, my paternal grandmother knitted socks for everyone that I still wear to this day. My maternal grandmother sewed for everyone. When my mother was a child, her mother sewed for her. My mother sewed. I know we have things in the house that were made by generations even further back. And so there's also a continuity of creation.
Sewing and quilting allows my mind to be free. I could create anything I want based on texture and color and trying to evoke a mood or set a scene or take me back in time.
И я поняла, что за всю свою жизнь, какой бы я работой ни занималась, это я и работала в кассе, и попои, и я и убиралась, я и, неважно, какие другие проекты, и там, где я работала, я поняла, что без шитья, без в этой области творчества, все, что связано с шитьем, это и материалы, это и создание модели, это создание уже готовой какой-то одежды. И я не могу. Мне очень это много в жизни дает. И я поняла уже сейчас, как-то в седьмом десятке, что это смысл жизни. И это дает смысл жизни. Творческий процесс у меня лично целую жизнь. Особенно какой-то хотя специального образования у меня нет. Но для меня это смысл жизни.
They were able to use sewing as a way to show their love to their family and friends. I do the same thing. I love to mend clothes for my friends. I love to sew projects for my friends. It means so much to me, and in sewing I'm able to learn more about myself and develop my ideas when I think of new creative things to make.
Scotland by her mom, my aunt.
I learned how to sew from my grandma on my mom's side. She lives in France, but she would come and visit us a few times a year, and she would always come with the models that she has printed out designs for needlepoint. So every year my sister and I would get really into needlepoint for a few months. She also taught us how to knit and how to crochet, and she would sew all sorts of things for us. So growing up, all of our sweaters were knitted by her. She's absolutely incredible, and then she would just sew bedspreads for us, pillowcases for us, everything, and she would mend our clothes. It was incredible, and so she taught my sister and I how to do that. And what's really meaningful is that when we would do embroidery, we would use thread from my dad's mom. So my grandma on my dad's side passed away before I was born, and she left her embroidery thread for my father, because embroidery was very important to her. So growing up, I was able to learn to sew with my grandma on my mom's side, while also being connected to my grandma on my dad's side.
Sewing, from my point of view, is often a much more practical art in its application, like what you're making, than many other things. Like women would make the items needed for the children or for the household. So there's a necessity there, and I really like that. Work that's tied directly to the need, the needed outcome, has a kind of meaningfulness that I think I really valued.
Что для меня значит шитье? Ну, во-первых, это не только шитье, это все-таки какое-то творчество. Я не, как вот, например, бабушка, от которой я училась, она была безграмотная, она даже писать не умела. И для нее это действительно было ремесло, шитье. А для меня это все-таки уже не только техническая часть, как бы шитье, это сама машинка, это тоже техническая часть. Интересно, что швейные машинки за, я не знаю, 200 лет, они так и не поменялись, ничего в них. То есть техническое, наверное, для меня как-то меньше чего значит, хотя это тоже надо знать, наверное. Для меня это все-таки некое творчество.
It's so satisfying to me that my granddaughter also has a love of art and sewing and creating. I think it's just wonderful that in some very small way I've been able to transfer some knowledge and skills and love through my experience and pass that on to you.
It's just like a necessary skill to mend clothing. I steal a lot of my clothing from my mother and father. My father is a carpenter, so a lot of stuff's full of holes and covered in paint and vinyl and everything. So it's just practical. It's also
And in part, I sewed for myself. In that period of time, I didn't have a lot of money, but I did have a lot of time. And I loved, in sewing, I loved two things especially. One was the logic of sewing. Like, sewing requires a lot of thorough thinking and anticipation, and often you're cutting things and piecing them together in ways that seem backwards but later will come together exactly as they're meant to. And you have to anticipate that over and over again and make things precise. And I loved the challenge, the logical challenge of it. And I also loved the flow state that would happen when I would be really immersed in sewing.
all was sewing, but it was drapes for her home or clothes for herself, beautiful, lovely dresses, and fixing my grandpa's work things.
Historically speaking, it's incredibly feminist, it's incredibly generational. There's kind of a amount of classism in the art world, well, duh, but what that is like craft versus art, where labor and art that was created by women, and especially women of color, was not seen as art because those people weren't seen as people.